Manchester City 0, Liverpool 2. That'll be that then. Mark Donaldson, Gab Marcotti, Janusz, Michallik. And is that the scent that I smell of succession, Janusz?
Yeah, I mean, we're probably looking at the next Premier League champions, right? Even now, I know there's still Newcastle at home on Wednesday. That's not going to be easy, but probably a message ahead of the League Cup final anyway. But yeah, you're looking at something that I think most of us didn't see. I would imagine, at least out of three of us ahead of the season after Jurgen Klopp has left, and Liverpool didn't really go to a transfer market at all. But just goes to show how good of a manager Arne Slot has been so far, how much he's changed the team, how much he's improved many players, and he reaping the benefits right now because this was Liverpool against their biggest rival in absolute and total control.
Totally. They were very comfortable, Gab, weren't they? And how surprising was it for you that City were as insipid at home as they were? They just didn't have any answers today.
I really struggle with this, and obviously, we can point to no John Stones at the back, and
that wouldn't have made much of a difference, Gab.
Well, but the tactics nerds would say, well, he would have stepped into midfield and controlled the midfield with his passing or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, it didn't help, and obviously Erling Haaland's absence didn't help. What I really struggle with right now is Pep Guardiola, and I think right now, I think if he wasn't so invested in this, new contract or the extension he signed with the club, and can't be seen to be leaving and the charges in the background, and what message does that send? I think the guy needs like a long holiday because he's trying different things, right? We saw it against Real Madrid when he played that wacky formation. Tried it again today with the sort of trying to isolate Trent Alexander-Arnold, and weirdly it actually worked. Doku, I think, I saw a stat flash up on screen that Doku had completed 8 dribbles by halftime against Alexander-Arnold, which was some kind of, so it was like already like the highest amount this season, and it was only 45 minutes. But guess what? If the other team is defensively organized, if the players double up, if there's Mohamed Salah in front of them who works as hard as any winger, it's not going to do you much good. And it's sad to see City. I mean, I'm not a City fan, but I remember City being really good. This is just a shell right now.
It's exactly what it is. It's more the speed that it's happened. I mean, this has happened really quickly because most people thought that City were the favourites beforehand and Arsenal might win it, but Liverpool weren't even given a mention by most, with Arne Slot coming in and no additions in the transfer market. So, Janusz, 2-0, very, very
comfortable. Thanks you, by the way.
What's that?
If Federico Chiesa were on here, he would say, you know what? Admittedly, I haven't played very much, but I am a real person.
He is.
I have a highlight video on YouTube, okay? So
yeah, not of Liverpool, of his other team. 2-0 and very covered. Right. You've mentioned John Stones, who doesn't deserve to be mentioned. You've mentioned Chiesa. He doesn't deserve to be mentioned. This is about Liverpool today. So Janusz, what impressed you most about the way they went into a game and performed in a game where we thought would be a lot closer, but ultimately they always looked like they had the organization to keep City at arm's length?
I just think you have to say this is a true team in every sense of the word. And I'm not saying that it wasn't under Jurgen Klopp, but we knew the little details, the little nuances. You look at the attitude, not the quality, because we all knew about Mo Salah, right? I mean, we knew there was some issues there. I mean, he's been wonderful for Jurgen Klopp in the past. Remember that season, 34 goals. But I just think that if you look at the way he's playing, we could go position by position. Like today, for example, I look at somebody. I remember the conversation about Van Dijk. I mean, this was Professor Van Dijk today, and not just today, throughout the season. Not just the ultimate leader of the team, but just the quality. Just imagine what he would have been if he didn't miss the season with that injury. Because I mean, you can see it, right? Even and Gab was right. I mean, you look at Trent Alexander-Arnold today. He wasn't just beaten, by Doku ends up, but even Marmoush when he was coming over there. He was beaten just about everybody, and he's been off. I don't know about the rumors or where he's going to go. I mean, the truth of the matter is that in general, I feel that he's not even at this moment good enough for Liverpool in so many ways. We know what he gives you going forward. He showed that quality today in the game. Defensively, he's always been poor, and that's another example of that, because there's some people that continue to say that he's getting better. I don't know if he is. It doesn't look to me. But, if you look at, players like Van Dijk, what they've been able to do with Gravenberch, we've talked about that. I've had many doubts about Szoboszlai, and look at the way he's playing right now. I mean, he was the best player on the pitch today, right?
He was.
And so we can go on and on and on, but it is just a team, something that Pep Guardiola has had in the past. I'm not going to have a go at him for the simple fact that they have an off season. Nothing lasts forever. What they've done under him in the last few years is incredible. But I will have a go at him, because how did he not see this coming? How did he not see the decline coming? What did he think? So he went a season way too far, didn't do anything in the off-season of essence, other than Savinho, right? Because Gundogan, I think we could at least guess that it's not going to be the same. And he just waited too long, something that Jurgen Klopp at the very least didn't do, and leave Arne Slot with a great team to change and even improve. So here we are.
It was a super opening goal, Gab, wasn't it? It was really well worked. And it was played short by McAllister to Szoboszlai, and then Mohamed Salah got the slight aid of a deflection to take it over Ederson. But it just, that goal for me epitomized that Liverpool in the whole game were kind of just one step ahead.
Yeah, I think so. And again, on Slot, look, I've praised him to high heavens, both on the macro level, what he inherited and what he had to deal with this season, which I still think some people don't fully appreciate. But even on the micro level in this game, right, he comes off the situation where, they've had these back-to-back draws, these performances that weren't necessarily great. And now here's a trip to Manchester City, and things could get potentially hairy, or at least that's what we thought before Arsenal's defeat yesterday. And what does he do? He changes. He's got the courage again to change things around. Chuck Curtis Jones in there, start with Luis Diaz and Mohamed Salah up front. Make these tweaks, which we hadn't seen from him before, because we
one or two issues with Gab's connection.
This is just tremendous. It's making adjustments.
You froze. You're back now, which is great, but you froze. We wondered what happened. Had the closet monsters come and got you?
I was praising Arne Slot.
Oh, I know. And then you went
for the adjustments he made. Well, because that is how amazed I was. No, just how impressed I continuously am with this guy. Right, the clock is ticking on the free agents. Right, nobody's talking about it anymore.
The clock is ticking on the free Wi-Fi.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Get a raise for proper Wi-Fi. But he changes the system around in this game. I mean, I thought that was pretty. For long stretches, Szoboszlai and Jones lining up alongside each other, Diaz and Salah starting wide. These were very effective tweaks, and dropping Nunez after what he said about Nunez. The man has personality. The man showed that at 2-0, he also knows how to administer a lead. He doesn't go with the all-out press for 90 minutes. And by the way, Liverpool are on their way to winning their first title in 30 years in front of their own fans. Yeah. Remember, last time it was COVID. It was a monumental achievement. Totally different vibe. And again, that's a whole other layer of pressure on top of it. I can't say enough about him, about the leadership from Van Dijk and Salah. It's been phenomenal. They've been really, really good.
We'll get on to Salah in a second. Janusz, you've had your say on Pep, and Gab's just had his say on Arne Slot. Let's just isolate this for this game only. Given what Gab's rightly said, it was like the split strikers to allow the space in behind him. City's issue this season has been no Rodri, so pretty much no protection for the back four. So Curtis Jones took turns to kind of play the false nine position. Luis Diaz was in and around as well. Today, did Arne Slot outcoach Pep Guardiola?
Yeah, he did, but I think it was, if you look at this, both managers coming into this knew that their team weren't at their absolute best. I mean, it's easy for us to talk about now because, we found out what we knew about Manchester City, and I think that's what Arne Slot probably was banking on, because his team in the last couple of games wasn't at their great at their best. Today, early on, I just thought that Liverpool were timid as well, but they knew the longer they stay in the game, especially to play a little bit on the counter, he knew that Manchester City were not going to have the legs to deal with him for 90 minutes. And you look at that bench, as you said, look, I mean, part of Liverpool softness, if you will, in those games against Everton and Villa, for me, was the fact that Hakpo wasn't there. Because if Hakpo was 100%, I think this game would have been 3-4. We wouldn't have seen any other changes, because I think this was another thing that, of course, Arne Slot improved. I didn't mention that early on for this reason, because I knew we were going to come onto Hakpo, right? Just playing him in the position that Jurgen Klopp never even felt to play him in, which is his natural position on that left-hand side, and he's been absolutely tremendous. So I think this was a careful consideration. Liverpool did not play an incredible game today, but they knew what they needed to get done, because the opposition was so weak. And it's just funny to even say that, right? Because these two teams for years were deciding who's going to be the champions in this league. So it was a good performance. It was a smart performance in terms of how to play Curtis Jones. But as I think Gab said, or you, I'm not sure, there were really three players playing that position. Yeah. Szoboszlai alongside of him, and Luis Diaz changing positions with Curtis Jones as well.
Gab, when people reach the age of 32, most normal human beings start to slow down. Mohamed Salah is kind of going the other way. He's kind of speeding up. Here's some stats for you. This is his 5th 30-goal season in 8 for Liverpool. It's his 25th Premier League goal of the campaign. He scored in 6 consecutive Premier League games. He's now got 51 goal involvements, because he got the assist for Szoboszlai for the second, across all competitions, 30 goals and 21 assists. There is nothing to suggest that he's going to slow down anytime soon. So if the sticking point is duration of contract rather than money, should there be any debate the way that he's kept himself fit?
Look, I'm against the people who say, pay him what he wants, pay him what he wants. I think Liverpool are where they are because they've been smart about this. And, you can look at this, but people can also drop off fairly quickly. And you're going to have
Manchester
other
City
positions. Exactly. And, Kevin De Bruyne, too, was pretty darn good not that long ago. Now, obviously, Salah's been more durable and whatever, and we can raise all these points. There's a number at which it makes sense, both in terms of his wages and in terms of his contract lengths. And there's a number at which it doesn't make sense. And I think if you're going to trust, the nerds at Liverpool, Julian Ward and whatever else, all these guys who've come back, if you're going to trust them for their contributions in building Liverpool's first title-winning side under Klopp, I think you have to trust them here, that they're going to make the right decision. And maybe you're also going to trust in Salah a little bit. Look, Mohamed Salah has made a lot of money in his career, right? He has a couple years left. If he moves, I assume he already has obtained generational wealth. I would like to think that if he moves, he does it because he wants a different challenge, a new sporting challenge. And there's only one place in the world, realistically, where he can have that. He could go to Real Madrid as a free agent, and boom, how about that? Salah, Mbappe, Vinicius, lights out, and he would be a great fit.
Who's tracking back?
Unless that happens, and there's no indication that that's going to happen. People talk about, Saudi Arabia. What? Because he's Muslim, he's got to go to Saudi Arabia? Come on now. I think the guy still has a ton of professional pride. And can you leverage that? Can you say, hey, Mohamed, listen, this is the reality. We can give you this much for this long because we want to make sure we still have a competitive team around you, and we need to spend money on this position and that position. And maybe you do the same thing to Van Dijk, and maybe you get some sort of, team-friendly situation. I want to believe that this is something that they can do. I do not believe that Warner and John W. Henry are like, let's save on Mohamed Salah's contract so that we can take money out of the club and, buy ourselves another gold toilet, because the reality is That's not what they've done thus far, right? So I have to believe that everybody can come together in a way that makes sense. Does everybody take a little step back? Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But the goal has to be a competitive Liverpool, ride this wave. You can maybe win the Champions League this year, and go for the Champions League and another title next season. And that's something that should make everybody happy.
It's funny you talk about the Liverpool ownership. I did an interview for ESPN FC with James Pallotta when he was at Roma, and he said they thought Liverpool had overpaid for Mohamed Salah when they did the deal. So it was Pallotta that paid for lunch because he felt that Liverpool had paid too much for Mohamed Salah. And look how that turned out. Janusz, every dynasty starts with that first championship. Today, you could argue it wasn't just a gap, it might have been a chasm. Certainly over the course of the season, Liverpool are miles better than anybody else. Could this be the start of Liverpool's dynasty?
Absolutely. Well, yeah. I mean, that's why I think if I were Liverpool, I'd double down on that. I know there's a price you can't cross, and Gab, correct me if I'm wrong. What's he on? Like 300 plus, right? 350 or close a week. So that's a lot of money. Obviously, he's going to want to have more. Do they have to spend that money? Probably not. But I think, the earnings that you can have, and if you want to be consider a little bit of a dynasty, I mean, Liverpool are in a position to do something big in the next couple of years. And whatever you earn from that, on and off the pitch is incredible, quite incredible. And spending the money, that kind of money on Salah and then somebody else, if you believe the rumors, right? I mean, Liverpool is going to have to spend not just on Salah if they want to keep him, but probably spend big on another one or two significant players, depending, of course, on what happens with the three players that we talk about. I do believe that at least two out of the three will stay. And I do believe, and in order for Liverpool to continue on this road, they need to keep Mohamed Salah. The risk is worth it. I still think they can recoup that money if need be. If he, as Gab said, becomes, De Bruyne all of a sudden, which is possible, of course, then I still believe there's a market where they can recoup at least half the money. So they absolutely need to keep him, and I believe that they will.
The following is subjective. You could argue that Liverpool are or are not the best team in Europe right now. Maybe it depends on the championship or it depends on the competition, because Real Madrid seem to be a different animal in the Champions League. But where are Man City right now in the grand scheme of things, Gab?
I mean, they won't be winning the Champions League, obviously. I think the goal now has to be to make sure you get into next season's Champions League. In some ways, most of these people in the know think that the 130 charges, that we're supposed to get a verdict in early January, and now it's late February. We still don't have a verdict, but whatever the verdict is, it's going to be appealed, and then we won't have the result of that appeal until next season, right? So they have to proceed as normal. I think if you're Man City, what I would want to know if I were a Man City fan is who's running the club, right? Because Chiki Begiristain is leaving. He's in a lame duck situation. And obviously the guy from Sporting Lisbon is coming in, but he's still at Sporting Lisbon. So you just spent this enormous amount of money on Kusanov and Vitor Reis and Marmoush and Nico as well, which raised a lot of eyebrows. Who's doing this? What is the plan? How are the pieces going to fit in the summer? You still have a Bernardo Silva situation to deal with. You've got a Kevin De Bruyne situation to deal with. There's just a ton of question marks. And I think one of the other question marks, I'm sorry, has to be Pep. I know he made a commitment, but, he had made a commitment to Barcelona and twice he resigned and then changed his mind and brought him back. This can't all weigh heavily on him. What I would love is, I would wish there was somebody else at Manchester City other than Pep who could come out and say, this is the plan, this is what we're doing. Instead, they hide behind lawyers, they hide, they simply push Pep out. I know he gets paid a lot of money to face difficult questions, including questions which really have nothing to do with him. But you have to have, I think, in terms of messaging with this fan base, you have to have an indication, a sense of, okay, this is what we're trying to achieve long term. This is what we're going to build the team around and not have this whole thing about, well, if Bernardo wants to leave, he can leave. And, oh, well, bring back Gundogan. Have somebody maybe even just explain what was the strategy these last 2 seasons, right? I mean, Janusz mentioned before bringing in Savinho. The reason they could spend so much money in January and they can spend an absolute boatload again in the summer and still be compliant with PSR is that in the 2 previous years, they made an enormous amount of money and they chose not to spend. Okay, so what is the strategy now? Why was there that strategy not to spend? Did you really think you could just add Savinho and then Gundogan and be fine? Who made that decision? Pep's going to say, oh, it was me, blame me. Okay, fine. But we know it couldn't have just been Pep, right? We 1,000% know that. We know that coaches get paid a lot of money to go in and toe company lines. I would like some sort of clarity because you know what? There will be a post-Pep era there. There might even be a post-Abu Dhabi era, maybe even sooner than people think. And I think City fans are owed answers.
The way I think about it, it doesn't have to be as drastic, maybe, but I do agree that they're going to have to make a statement and make a statement very, very quickly because I still think that there's an excellent team in there. Because, I mean, we saw what happened early. No preseason. A lot of these guys were, if I think of, Kyle Walker when he was still there, when I think of Phil Foden, how bad they were for England, European Championships, how many of these players didn't have a preseason at all. There are other teams that had those issues, but they had perhaps more than other players. And we've seen how long it has taken these players to get in. Kyle Walker's not there. Phil Foden's not the same player, but I think there's still something in him. I look at Haaland, he's going to continue to score the goals. I think Ruben Dias and Akanji and Ake, if they have a healthy season, even Ederson, who everybody doesn't like anymore, is going to be much better than he is because that defensive unit is still, for me, good enough. On the assumption that Rodri is going to come somewhere close to where he is, I still think that you're talking about Manchester City, that's going to be a very, very formidable force. However, that statement, and, I'm just throwing rumors, if indeed Pep Guardiola loves Florian Wirtz, then they have to deliver him at all costs. There's going to be 2 or 3 teams that are going to be fighting for him. Who knows? He may stay at Leverkusen, although obviously with Xabi Alonso, if he does go, it's going to be more difficult. But if they do get a player that Pep likes, like Florian Wirtz, perhaps 1 or 2 others, I look at this team, I look at the injuries they've had this season, and I think to myself that Manchester City are going to be fighting once again for the title next season if that happens. But as Gab said, who's going to be making that decision and how quickly can they make those decisions?
This was Liverpool's day at the Etihad. 2-0. They beat Man City. And the message for them is pretty clear tonight. Catch us if you can. Bye for now.